Awesome. Well, welcome. I'm so excited because today we get Angela Sheik. She has a huge commercial. Her music got placed on a huge Toyota commercial, and it's a great, it's a great song, by the way. I actually just listened to it like just before the call, and you got so many creative little bells and whistles, ear candy going there. And I got to ask you straight away. I've got to ask you. So you said, I think the lyrics were for the chorus, or the part they used was like, I want to fly, I think it is from memory, and then I want to drive. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. That's perfect for Toyota. And,
Thanks. I was very excited they thought so.
yeah, exactly. And I thought it was really cool too how you had well they put it together. You said I forget how it goes, but there's this really cool melody that goes, "Ooh, I wanna fly," and then they had the skiing guy come like doing flips and
Yes.
stuff,
Yeah.
and then woohoo, I want to drive or something, and then the Toyota's going up the snow hill, and it's like it's perfect. So
Yeah.
tell me, well, how did you get that? How does somebody get a placement like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a really long road, but I started falling in love with producing maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I do really well if I have somebody give me a deadline. So I had it was a taxi brief, I think, came in originally. You didn't want me to mention names. Should I
That's
not be saying?
fine. That's all right.
So anyway, so they were looking for songs about driving, and it was just I had a window where I had from like a Wednesday night to a Friday afternoon, and I was like, oh man, if I don't sleep or eat or pee much, I could get this whole thing done. Like I could do this. So I did. I pulled like 1.5 all-nighters, and the reference tracks that they had were songs that are stuff that I really was into. Like it was right in my wheelhouse. Tegan and Sarah, and just a couple bands that I was already like, oh, I know that sound. I love that stuff. So it
That
was a
sure
nice
helps.
challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that helps.
So yeah, it was just a kind of a binge, and I wrote the song, sang it probably at like 4 a.m.,
Wow.
produced it. I have an old keyboard that was one of my first fully weighted 88 key. It's a Roland FP4, and
Oh,
I used to practice it with scales because it has this little sample in it that if you hit it it's a human voice sample. If you hit it a certain velocity, it'll go do, but if you hit it too hard, it'll go dow. So I'd practice scales on it because you could kind of hear if your velocity changed. If your thumb was hitting too hard, it would go do 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 dow, and you'd know to keep practicing.
yeah.
So I used that sample on the song as the bass line.
It's so
And
funny. I was going to ask you, that was something, I was going to ask you how you got that sound. I thought it was the real vocal going doom, 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 or however
yeah,
the
no, I
vocal.
tried to sing it. It just didn't sound cool enough, and I was dropping the vocal to try to sound like a bass, and just didn't sound right. But ended up using that anyway. It didn't get picked for that um, taxi listing,
Oh,
so it was just a song I had. I really liked the song. I was happy with it. Yeah, I would have put my artist name on it and released it. That's I was happy with it, and I ended up submitting it to a few libraries, and one took it, and it sat in that library for maybe 2 or 3 years.
oh, wow.
2 years. And probably in October of last year, I got an email saying, hey, could you send us the stems to that? Which is always a good sign. Like when the library asks you for stems, that's really good. But then I waited for another 3 months before they told me that it finally went through. And
Wow.
yeah, by then they already had the commercial, and I was able to share it. So
That's
yeah,
great. That is
yeah,
really cool. So
really exciting.
when you actually wrote the song, you used it for a deadline. That is really cool. So you used a deadline. You didn't get that, but then like it didn't land that pitch, but it landed because it was still, if you said to yourself, oh, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it, I don't have the time, then you wouldn't have had that song for
Yeah,
later. So that is really cool.
that's why I love those deadlines. Even if you don't get picked, usually at the end, I have an awesome song. I can do something with it. I can learn to perform it and do it on stage, or I can sign it somewhere else. And
Yep.
yeah, works out.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like right now you can't remember that you lost. You said a night and a half, so you can't remember not sleeping. It's like you're all caught up. But it's like, but now you have this song, and it's
Yeah,
producing
exactly.
income, and it's like, that is so cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
great song.
Thanks.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to put the, is that okay to put the link in the bottom
Absolutely.
here? And yeah, so anyone else who wants to check it out, it's really cool. And gosh, you're so
Thanks, Steve.
creative. You're, how do, what goes through your mind when you're creating all these sounds? Like just using a keyboard like that for those doom, but not pressing it too hard. That takes a different kind of thought process. What's some of your, how do you do some of that kind of stuff?
I don't know really how to answer that question. I feel like, well, I think producers, a lot of us, we get bored easily. So you want your song to be constantly evolving. So you're constantly um, listening to other music and stealing only from the best, you know,
Yeah.
and just listening how can verse two be different than verse one? And I try to have a lot of real sounds in my production. So my grandfather was a woodworker, and when he died, he left like shelves and shelves of like little glass jars full of nuts and bolts. And those
Wow.
are my shakers. So those aren't going to sound exactly like anybody else's shakers. So
No.
those are in there. I love little instruments, like I have one on me today. I love little little sound makers. So I
Yeah.
think there's a little kalimba that I just played a do 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 in that
Yeah. Is that the
song.
very end?
There's a little section right in the middle, and then at the end it tails out
Yeah. There's an
to that little
instrument at the end
kalimba.
there. It was like, that's a cool choice. It was really
It's
cool.
crushed. I mean, you can't really tell what it is really, but
Right. Wow. Well,
yeah.
yeah,
So
it sounds
real
really cool.
instruments, live instruments, and always I'm looking around. Like sometimes if you hold it up to the microphone, a nice rip of a piece of paper sounds like a great snare. So just trying to come up with
Oh, yeah.
unusual
Yeah.
sounds that your ear doesn't quite recognize. That I love that stuff.
Yeah.
That's
That's
my
so
drug of
cool.
choice.
Now, I'm a big fan of an artist called Imogen Heap.
I love Imogen. Yeah,
She's just like, yeah, she's killer. She's just got all
she's
these
killer.
creative, like, what is that sound? You know?
Yeah. My friend snuck me into their backstage after party when she was at the Greek theater this past summer. I got to give her a hug.
Wow. We
She
should,
won't ever remember it, but yeah, I
yeah,
will take that with me forever. Yeah, I'm a
yeah,
huge fan.
yeah. She's
She's such an
so
innovator.
talented. Yeah. So I know you said you're a producer. Uh, so when did you start getting into the film and TV world or the licensing world, or have you tell me a little bit, just a little bit of your background, how you got into this world?
Yeah, okay, I'm a recovering middle school orchestra teacher. I used to teach middle school, high school orchestra and band. So I guess if you go to school for that, they teach you how to suck on every instrument. So I'm like horrible trumpet player. I'm horrible at the violin, but I took lessons, and I took lessons as I was teaching because kids would quickly surpass me. So I play a lot of a little of a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and realized at some point that I was constantly yelling at kids for not practicing when I hadn't practiced steadily in probably years. So I started picking up my instruments again and saying, okay, why am I not motivated to play the classical music that I was trained on? Um, and long story short, I was only motivated to play songs when I was creating. So I started to become more of a songwriter, and songwriting equaled sounds, it equaled arrangement. So that led to recording my own stuff. So I started out as a co-producer, and I think that's where a lot of songwriters start. You're in the studio, you've
Yeah.
hired the guns to know where to place the mics and whatnot, but you have an idea of what frame you want to put this sound in. And I just learned from great people, worked with great people, and eventually said, this is something I'd like to try to do all by myself. Took lessons from some great people. CK Barlow, I don't know if you know her,
Yes.
but I
Yeah.
took,
TK. Yeah. You've done some co-writes. Yeah.
she's a fantastic producer, just
Yeah.
top notch. And she offered private lessons, some online, and sometimes I would drive to her house in Baltimore. And she really upped my game. So I recommend that highly. And yeah, just listening, constantly listening. So as far as getting into sync, I think what it was is I started writing songs, I started performed nonstop for a couple of years and burnt out,
Yeah.
and said, what can I do from home where I'm still making music and I can play when I want to, but I got to have some other kind of income and some other reason to make music
Yeah.
other than thinking of a stage. So that's kind of where it started. Long answer to your question, Steve.
No, that's really cool. Everyone has this different background, and a lot of people kind of come back around to what you said. It's kind of like it's another source, and you can make the music when you want to. That is part key, because when I remember the days when I was gigging 7, 8 days a week, it seemed like, it's like,
Yeah.
and you had to go out, you had to gig, and you didn't want to, and
Yeah.
you weren't sure what, or even you knew the venue, and you're like, oh, I have to go out there again or whatever, and you have to, but if you build up this film and TV, all these royalties, if you build that up, then you get to pick and choose what you want to do that day. It's like, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful day, I'm going to sit by the pool or go to the beach. But,
I don't know. I feel like I'm working harder than ever, but at least you finish something like that song, and there's a levity to it. It's not like this is my album that I'm releasing. There's just some more of a sense of play and lightness to it sometimes. And yeah, that song is out there, and it's gonna live past me making some income for somebody. So I think that's really cool. All your kids, my
yeah.
songs are my kids.
Yep.
They're out there working.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing in
Absolutely.
little paychecks here and there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good way. That's a good way to look at it. That really is. So you're working on any new projects at the moment, or do you have anything that's exciting that you want to talk about, or is there?
Yeah. Well, I went for me kind of sync crazy for a while and was trying to find the edges of my wheelhouse. Like, okay, can I make radio pop? Can I make a trap hip hop song? Can I make just really trying to see where my edges were, and
Mm-hmm.
realizing I didn't like what was far out on the edge. I really love a certain kind of song, and I brought it back to the middle. And it's been 5 years since I've released an artist project. So that's my next thing that I'm really working on, is kind of I still think in the term of albums, just songs that are connected.
Right.
And yeah, just trying to get back more into what that looked like, perform
Yeah.
a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, these are not the days to be talking like that, but yeah, just sharing in a live
Yeah.
sense. That's what I'm
I,
working on.
yeah, and I think that the whole industry is like, for anybody who's watching this, we're filming this right during the middle of in May, during the COVID kind of 19 deal, where everyone's probably historically it'll be everyone will know what time this is. It's like
Yeah, you're
everyone's
like,
in.
we don't want to talk about that.
No, but that's right. But it's everyone's exploring these new avenues and these new ways of what is it going to look like after this. And I think there's going to be an amazing amount of online live stuff going on.
Yeah.
Where people are doing concerts. I think it's going to be more of an accepted norm, where it's like, I think 3 or 4 months ago, it's like, you're seeing a live band on your computer. What's wrong with you? So.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think it's going to be totally different. It's going to be like, oh yeah, cool, yeah. I had a few friends over, and we had, had some drinks and watched so and so playing on Zoom or whatever, or
Yeah, exactly. That's why I set this space up behind me, because I think, just like I always try to leave my instruments out, otherwise they don't get played as much.
yeah.
I'm just trying to make it easy to go live, just make that a part of normal life for now.
Now,
Yeah,
now
work it
you've
in.
got some crazies. I have to ask one more question on your artist kind of stuff and creating all these really cool sounds. I've watched a couple of your videos, I think on Facebook, or maybe it was Instagram, and you're playing with all these different sounds, and it's like, it looks like you're just having a ball, just loving
I
it.
do. Yeah, I really do have a ball. Especially, I mean, I miss the live environment because there's this element of risk. The
Yep.
waitress or somebody is gonna get into because I live loop, and
Uh-huh.
it's just gonna change the song for tonight. And I miss that. But yeah, I do. I really love putting things together on the fly, and just
Yeah.
like trying to keep this element of what could happen, what's gonna go wrong, and how's that gonna make the song cool this time.
Yeah, so that is really, I really like that attitude of like thinking that, yeah, something could go wrong and it could make it cool. And that's
Yeah.
the cool thing. Something just
That is
changes.
not my normal attitude. I've had to learn that. It
Really.
had to be beaten into me. So yeah.
Well, Well, that's awesome. Well, I want to jump into part two. You know, I know you work with the Guild of Music Supervisors, and
Right.
boy, you've got a ton of information on how to approach music supervisors and what not to do, even more.
Yes, both.
So now, how can before we close up part one, how do people listen to more of your stuff? Do you have a website, or what's the best way to follow you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm on pretty much most platforms. Everything is Angela Sheik. So my name Angela. Sheik is Sheik, Sheik, and I'm kind of on everything too much. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I just started TikTok, but
Yeah.
haven't been doing too much on there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming in and coming on the Zoom, I guess, and I'll see you in part two.
sounds good. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.